Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
Coming to you a little bit early this week in Top of the Podcast land.
Yeah, what are you doing? I mean, this is weird. It's like I'm in my bathrobe. I look up. Suddenly you're just there.
Well, it wasn't up to me, but there was an announcement. I got like a Facebook message, and it was like, what do you think they're going to ban? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And it turns out there was a crazy early ban today. Today is Monday the 9th. That was announced earlier today, and you and I are just like, we got to get on the horn. We got to do an extra special bonus Top of a Podcast episode.
Well, if they feel the need to like break the normal, like the band announcement schedule because it's that urgent, that important, and that ground shaking. I mean, we got to have ourselves an extra chance to discuss this immediately because the consequences are wide-reaching, and this is the first. I mean, the modern ones I think are important, but I also think, I mean, it's the modern gets a lot of stuff happens in modern. It's crazy, but like this is the first standard ban set of bans in years, and this is only the second one in over a decade, right?
I mean, this is and it's the timing of it, right? So I thought, just based on the timing, I thought they were going to ban one of the new cards, but no. Whoa. The actual things that they banned, I was very surprised. They're very justified, and we're going to take the next, however long this podcast is to discuss kind of the justifications and what the ramifications are around some of these things. But I was shocked that they were going to do this today, and, like you said, they're going to do something like that. We got to get on the horn while the iron's hot.
Yes.
So, this is the Top of a Podcast. I'm Michael J. Flores.
I'm Patrick Chapin. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, everybody out there, everyone who's listening to this podcast and following us on Twitter, where we're Top of a Podcast, on Facebook, where we're Top of a Podcast, on Patreon, where we're Top of a Podcast. This episode is brought to you by...
Nice.
This episode is brought to you by Menno Smith from Patreon. Thank you, Menno.
Thanks, Menno.
And, all the various social media places where you can follow us, share, interact, maybe Instagram, maybe push around a little picture that we put. But we are very appreciative of all the fans out there. We do this for you, and now we're going to talk about some crazy left turns in modern and especially standard.
Yeah, let's start with modern because I think that one's a much easier one to tie a bow around.
Yep.
Modern, Gitaxian Probe, and Golgari Grave Troll added to the ban list. Let's start with Gitaxian Probe. Talk to me about Gitaxian Probe. What do you think?
I think that the banning of Gitaxian Probe can be summed up by a tweet that Tom Martell put out today, which was, I finally got Johnny Magic 00 to play a modern team event with me, and they banned the only card he knows how to play. So...
But see, there's a tweet that I saw earlier today that I think nicely encapsulates the whole experience. Patrick Sullivan noted that it turns out that cards that cost a Phyrexian blue are difficult to balance.
I mean, Gitaxian Probe it's just an offensive card, right? It's always been an offensive card.
Yeah.
And it's just gotten to pass through standard, modern, and whatever other formats it's been legal in, largely because it's not that powerful. Well, the problem is it's not that powerful. It's still infinite ROI, and it's almost never been used for a legitimate purpose, right? It's really
very rarely.
It's really just there to, like, for free, put a card in your graveyard and draw you into your Become Immense. You're like, well, if you didn't have the Become Immense, now you do. By the way, here's a card for free that gets it cheaper for you.
It's even more insidious than that, though, because outside of how much it gives you free triggers for prowess or anything like that, it very importantly lets you know whether or not they can kill your infect creature.
Oh yeah,
it lets you know if they can kill their Death Shadow. Like, you can just, before you go all in, you can just know what they have. And I think that is, at the end of the day, is the nail in the coffin, because while it is true the Gitaxian Probe is hyper efficient and just kind of like fuels some really unfair decks that have been doing very well. Or a little too well, some might say. At the end of the day, the problem with Gitaxian Probe that I think just barely pushes it over the edge in the hearts and minds of people who are defending it is the fact that it really it takes the gamesmanship out. It removes the risk for shoving all in with some of these combo decks and makes it a deterministic thing, and that's much less fun and exciting and interesting.
Yeah, that's a big deal, because back when the Gitaxian Probe was brand new and standard, just trying to think, where was it played? Like it never really got played in kind of like a regular way, did it? It was like, even when it was played in standard, I think like in Splinter Twin, that's at least like a combo deck.
Yeah, no. There was
you're compacting the deck.
No, there were Delver decks that used Gitaxian Probe to help up the spell count in their deck to flip their Delver, and made it so that you could Snapcaster Mage to draw a card with just 2 mana.
Okay, fair enough.
One could argue that was perhaps not necessarily the best thing to be able to be going on. You know, it's not like Delver. When you have to point to Delver of Secrets and Snapcaster Mage as the good guys
these
scenario,
are the sanity police.
Yeah, that something else has already gone wrong.
No, Patrick. This also made sure that you could draw into your Pike and that your Pike would do an additional damage.
Yeah, Sure.
Don't forget that's a fair interaction.
I think the Gitaxian Probe, it's been a long time coming. You know, whether it's Storm or Infect, Death Shadow, Gitaxian Probe is like pretty high on the list. Everything, Jeskai, and whatever thing you're thinking of, whenever you come up with anything that you shouldn't be doing, Gitaxian Probe is always the first thing you think to add. No matter what colors you're playing, no matter what it is you were doing, it's literally the ordering is, oh, I figured out something I shouldn't be able to do. Step 1, Gitaxian Probe. That's always step 1.
This is how silly Gitaxian Probe is. I was playing Blue-Green Infect, I want to say 2012 in Standard. It was right after the Caw-Blade bannings. Maybe, was that 2011 then? Whenever it was, I was getting ready for the TCG Player Championship. It was when you were playing, I guess, Teamer Birthing Pod in Standard. Remember we met up at the TCG Player Championship, and you played so awesome to get through that grinder. Super impressive. But anyway, so I was playing Blue-Green Infect, and I was working on my deck with Zvi, and the card is so silly. I had a 60-card deck with 2 Gitaxian Probes, and I'm like, Zvi, is there any real reason why I can't just play a 62-card deck with 4 Gitaxian Probes? Because I actually just want to play them. You know, they're good. But I don't want to cut any cards, you know, to play them. Which is ludicrous, right?
Yeah, but you're a ludicrous guy.
Yeah. I ended up playing 60 cards with only 2 Gitaxian Probes. But the fact that I was having a serious conversation about playing a 62-card deck with 4 Gitaxian Probes, you know, a standard kind of beatdown combo deck is telling.
Golgari Grave Troll. And just to be clear, by the way, I do think that Infect really needed to have a little bit of juice taken out of it. And a nice thing about Gitaxian Probe is that it doesn't just ban out the whole deck. It just pulls it down a notch to get more in line with the other strategies. But what about Golgari Grave Troll?
Well, I mean, just on that note, I think what's just going to happen is maybe they'll go from 3 to 4 become immense to just 2 become immense or something, and then just play more regular Fair Pump and maybe another land. It's probably... I think that deck's going to still be super viable. I don't know that's necessarily true of Death's Shadow, Zoo, and some of the momentum based combo decks, right? I think the Storm type combo decks and Pyromancer Ascension type stuff are going to be very hurt from the loss of Gitaxian Probe. And I don't know, maybe Death Shadow will survive. There's still street rates and stuff like that to set it up, but I would tend to doubt it.
We'll see. I mean, the rumors of these decks' demise have been greatly exaggerated in the past.
You know who the big winner here is?
Who is the big winner?
Affinity.
It's good.
Affinity, a little bit on the outside. She's like, oh, I'm a really powerful beatdown deck. When it was all Eldrazi, it was really all Eldrazi and me. And everyone forgot about me because they've got their fancy 3-color Eldrazi decks, and they've got their cathartic reunions. take away some Golgari Grave Trolls, take away some Gitaxian Probes. Who wins? Fairy Godmother. Fairy frickin' Godmother is the one who's going to come out on top because of this.
I assume you're speaking of Arcbound Ravager and not any fairies or gods or mothers. All of which get played in the format.
That's true. Is Una a mother? Anyway, I think that Affinity will be the big winner from these bannings. Golgari Grave Troll, I think that I love that banning, right? So there was a little experiment. Can we unban Golgari Grave Troll? The answer is yes. Cathartic Reunion obviously pushed that strategy way past where it was when they initially unbanned Golgari Grave Troll. I think that you just swap out Golgari. There's tons of other dredgers you can play in that spot that aren't as offensively powerful, right? So the problem with Golgari Grave Troll is it's crazy powerful. And if you change it out for literally any other dredge card, you're downgrading that dredge. But you still are going to have a critical mass of redundancy, especially because we've got Cathartic Union to set it up. I think that strategy will be fine. It will just be a little bit less powerful, which is
that's
fine.
That's one of the things I like about the approach they took this time on Modern is they took out 2 cards that didn't ruin any of the decks. Because people hate when you ruin the deck, right? Like when you ban the Birthing Pod, they hate when you ruin the deck. But in this spot, they just took 2 decks that were a little overperforming. And they took they took a little bit of juice out of them in ways that the splash damage affects only people doing really unfair things.
Yeah, I love the Modern bannings. I think if I thought of my mental picture of Modern, the fact that I can't believe that I have Affinity as a good guy deck in my head right now, but the fact that deck I think is going to be a big winner. I think it's going to free up space for decks like Gruul aggro. I think that Gruul is a pretty interesting deck that doesn't get that much play because, there's all these other much more powerful decks that you can play in Modern. But it's an interesting... You played against this, right, with the Burning Tree...
Yeah.
The Burning Tree, is it Emissary or Shaman?
Emissary.
Burning Tree, Emissary, and Rancor. And I love that guy who you can discard him for 2 mana, or he could be a 4/4. The...
War-Clan Rampager.
Rampager. That guy's so cool because once I was playing against that deck and he cast it because it costs more than Eidolon Trigger, and I was like, oh my gosh, I thought you had no outs. And it was so it made for a game with some play, and plus it's a really powerful effect, So I think decks like that are going to get better, and I think that it's going to open up exploratory space for white weenie type decks or straight red type decks that wasn't there because the dredge deck was really, like you said, a cut above. Infect is still going to be a high tier deck. It's just not going to be whiz bang for sure the number 1 deck, which it has been for a while. I mean, that deck is like blue white in standard. It just has too many of the best cards, too fast relative to what other people are doing, and an ability to interact. The other combo decks in Modern can't tempo interact and play like a counter sliver deck the way that Infect can, and I think that's part of the cachet of it. When you take away the peak ability from Gitaxian Probe, you're at least forcing them to commit slots in their deck to cards that cost mana, if not actual mana, which obviously changes the composition to their draws. So I like it. I like both of these bannings. I think that they're going to make for a form. I actually already liked Modern all right, but I think they're just going to make for a format that is a little bit more open, and most of the strategies are still there, at least in spirit. So
yep.
I think you can still try to play some of these strategies even if they were previously reliant on one of these cards and see what happens.
So what about Standard? Let's start with Emrakul: The Promised End.
I was honestly shocked at the Standard bannings. I would have thought for sure. I mean, this is a stupid thing to think, considering the card has never seen one tournament of Standard play. But I thought for sure they were just going to ban Felidar Guardian, right?
No, there's no way. There's no way they would ban Felidar Guardian there.
No way they're going to ban Saheeli Rai, right? So,
no, yeah, of course. So here we are. No, so you got to understand. You got to understand the previewing of Felidar Guardian resulted in Saheeli Rai's interest being at an all-time high by a mile. If nothing else, it would be a disaster. Like, let's say they even knew that it was going to be, like, pretty, like, messed up. It would be a disaster for people to be all in on Saheeli. The secondary market, people are snatching it up, they're moving in, everybody's, like, brewing, building around it. It's like the cornerstone of – it would be a disaster to then ban the card before it even gets a chance to do its thing. They've already opened the door to being able to get out of this scenario if the Pro Tour turns out to be a disaster, right? Like they added a second, like they announced that now they're going to start doing bans before and after a Pro Tour.
So that's all correct, and I think let's punt on Felidar Guardian until a little bit later in this cast. Let me just answer your question on Emrakul.
Emrakul, the Promised End.
I guess I know that I'm in the minority here, but I don't know. He's just not fun, right? That's the thing.
She is the problem.
She is not fun.
She is not just – it's not just the unfunness of playing with or against it. It is the incentives it creates in the format. It is the way that it pushes which card – like it defines which cards you can and cannot play with. And at the highest levels, it ends up making it for a much less satisfying and much less engaging format because of how much of the game and which paths can be explored end up getting warped around the eventual inevitable Emrakul.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
If you can only ban one card, Emrakul should definitely be it. In terms of like leading to the format being like having more room to explore this format and I happen to think that there's a ton of cards that should I think there's a lot of problematic cards, but you got to start somewhere. Standard doesn't just have bans all the time. And I think that if you could only ban one card, Emrakul is whiz bang without a doubt, hands down the right one card. And it's impressive that they actually banned it because it's like, it's like such a marquee character in the storyline and was, like the biggest, like it's such a big selling point from a previous set, and they're really, willing to sacrifice some of that stuff in order to try to make the game more fun. And I think it's awesome that they're taking this chance on that,
So just to talk about the incentives and how to think about Emrakul and building around either with or against Emrakul and Standard. So, we haven't talked present, pre-Aether Revolt Standard strategy in several weeks, right? So we've been focusing on new cards primarily. But I had a friend who had – it was one of the last PPTQs of the pre-Aether Revolt format this past weekend. And I said, I made this deck, but it hasn't been played in any tournaments. But I think you should play it. Anyway, long story short, he said he thought that the tournament was on easy mode and then lost to blue-white in the top 8, but whatever. But the thing is, like, it was a Marvel deck, but green-white Marvel with a ton of Wrath. So we talked a few months ago about playing Descend Upon the Sinful in Marvel as one of the hits, and I just pushed it to a far extent where you play 4 in the main deck and then add Fumigates. And the thing is, if you just play the Marvel Mirror, which is
you pushed it, or is this your friend, quote unquote?
Oh no, I made the deck and I just gave it to him.
Okay.
And so the whole thing is that you're playing the Marvel Mirror. You just like side in all these Fumigates and you start with 4 Descend Upon the Sinful, so you could just deck them. This is just Eric Lauer magic. And so that's just a weird thing to do in the format, right? Like, I'm going to play all the Wraths that I can play. Why? Because they can kill Emrakul, and if somebody takes control of your turn, they can't choose to do anything with the card, right? Like, they can't I'm going to blow... Like, when you get somebody who has point removal, there's an incentive, like, I will cast a creature, then I will use the point removal card on your own creature, and then run one of the other creatures into my huge Eldrazi creature to gain card advantage. If they take control of your turn and they see your hand has cards like Fumigate or Descend Upon the Sinful, they can't choose to do anything. Like, they're going to lose their Eldrazi Giant next turn. And that's a super warping, weird way to build a deck. That's my point, right? And that's just one example of perverted design space deck design space, I should say. That's a result of such a warping strategy where you have an opponent who they twist their entire deck around getting this thing into play, because getting this thing into play is itself a proxy for victory, right? It's like, if I do this, if I get this thing off on turn 4 with my Marvel, or I delirium enough different card types into my graveyard, I'm just going to cast this 13/13, and that means I probably win, right? Like, that's it.
Yeah, but that would be true of any powerful thing. That's not the problem comes with the whole taking the control of the turn, where you can't play with cards that can kill your other cards without also, like, you. And I think you were hitting at it a little bit with the fact that the sweeper can't be used against yourself without taking down Emrakul, right? Like, that's the point, is that it makes it so that like the majority of cards can be used against yourself if somebody else controls your turn. Emrakul is like dramatically stepping on all of those cards and just making the game so much more heavily about cards that can't be used against yourself in too devastating of a fashion.
Yeah, it's super skewing is the point.
Yeah.
So you like the Emrakul ban?
Without question. Literally, anything that they did involving banning Emrakul would have been an improvement compared to the previous world. That is already, they did it. They already got there. That's already a start. That's a step in the right direction. Then,
I am happy you're happy about this policy change. It makes me happy to see your stamp of approval.
The second card, if you could only ban 2 cards, the second card being Smuggler's Copter.
Wait, I want to do that one last. I want to do that one last.
But that one actually just totally makes sense. That's it. I think it's important in order. If you want to do that one last, that's fine. But to me, it just seems so obvious that if you only get to ban 2 cards, that's the card we said was going to get banned.
But they didn't ban 2, they banned 3.
I know, but that card's literally, like, it's an artifact that put 32 copies in the top 8.
Yeah, it's good.
So
super good.
Right, but it is overwhelmingly a defining force in the format. It's so much better than the other cards. Like, why would you not ban? Why would Smuggler's Copter not be the place? The problem with the current standard isn't just that, like, there's one strategy that's broken, right? It's not even this current standard has it has a paper rock scissors. There's things you can do, right? It's just that the whole format is in a rough spot. So, like,
it's actually. It's not like a regular rock, paper, scissors. Like, it's like you made like a cone with a piece of paper, right? And it just kind of like twirls in on itself.
Yes.
It's so weird to me. Like, playing it is weird. I played in a standard tournament this week, and just like I blew out blue-white, and then I got blown out by blue-white the next round, and I was just like, I don't even know what happened. Played the same deck in both rounds.
Well, it's because you just have a few powerful cards, and if you draw the better mixture of Gideons and Spellquellers and Smuggler's Copters or Archangel Avacins or whatever.
Yeah, he went first turn Thraben Inspector, second turn Smuggler's Copter, like with three Spellquellers in his hand both games. It's pretty hard to win. The one that I lost. But yeah, so Smuggler's Copter, hands down, is the single quote-unquote best card in Standard, right? Like, it's hard to make an argument for any other card. It was, yeah. So
until
but here's I'm just gonna make maybe a non-reason, non-logical, kind of more emotional thing. I didn't find it to be offensive. Like, if that was the best card in Standard, I'm all right with that. I'm all right with playing against Jite too. Okay, you create paradigms and can develop decks around the existence of some of these things, and it's rewarding to develop those things, and it's rewarding also to use, quote-unquote, the weapons of the enemy in a different way in order to blunt the incentives of others and to realize new and different synergies. And I think like the emergence of certain of these prized amalgam decks, some of these scrap heap scrounger decks that weren't so traditionally in color, I thought those were really, really interesting and largely enabled by the presence of Smuggler's Copter. I didn't find those to be offensive. And maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm just wrong. But I thought it was okay. Like
you're not wrong about you not finding them offensive. Right, but that's so. It's a very complex system. You have to understand their goal. Like when you go to change, like if you're going to ban a card or unban a card or whatever, right? Like when you change the rules, there's a very, very complex system that you're tinkering with when you're dealing with this many cards. It's not as simple as there's one strategy you need that's too good. It's not always as simple as there's one strategy that's too good, we need to take it down, right? Like sometimes they're, like in the case of the current standard, the things that were good or not were not necessarily the things that are fun for people to keep playing more and more of. It may be interesting from I've been playing Magic for 20-something years and I like when it's a new type of puzzle compared to just like attacking and blocking, right? But like in general, attacking and blocking, deciding what to attack, deciding what creature to kill so it doesn't attack you, deciding which creature to use to block which attacker. That's a really fun game. And it's very replayable and dynamic, and there's a lot of ways you can do that. And I think that Smuggler's Copter doesn't necessarily violate that. I think that as far as cards to be just off-the-charts powerful goes, Smuggler's Copter, I have a lot more tolerance for such a thing. But I think that Smuggler's Copter has definitely demonstrated that it is having a largely warping influence on the format, a defining influence. It's so ridiculously ubiquitous. And the fact that you have to choose all your removal based on copters, and you have to play with decks with creatures that can crew a copter, and I mean, it's all just it's leading to.
Oh my gosh, I hadn't thought about that. You know who's the biggest positive recipient in the banning of Smuggler's Copter in Standard? I think there's a definitive winner, actually. Now that you say these words out loud,
is it Liliana?
It's got to be Nissa 3. Right?
Oh, okay. I assume that Liliana and Nissa both are outrageously great recipients of this ban. Both, same reason, though. Same reason.
No. It's a little bit better for Nissa. Because Nissa got a twofold disincentive because Nissa's plant tokens couldn't crew a copter. Right? So that actually blunted one of the main things that might be synergy otherwise.
Yeah, but Liliana can't get a copter back either.
That's true.
I think it's the same thing. Those are the two biggest recipients, no question in my book.
Yeah, I mean, because, Smuggler's Copter is just...
At level 0 anyway, at the,
hell
at
on
the game.
Planeswalkers.
So that's actually part of it, is that there's a desire for the game to involve more combat, more Planeswalkers, more interaction, and more diverse mixes of interaction. And I think Smuggler's Copter has definitely demonstrated that it has been... it has, at the very least, it has been as good as we said it was going to be.
Yeah, I guess the first time somebody crews a Smuggler's Copter and you say, prior to declaring attackers harness lightning it, and you've demonstrated your ability to kill a Smuggler's Copter at instant speed prior to it getting its loot trigger, that might be a pretty satisfying thing, but the 400th time you've done it, you're like, I've done this before. It's kind of a...
I also think that it's just... If you ban Smuggler's Copter, it unbans so many other cards. Like, think about the diversity of cards that will get played to fill the... It's not like banning Smuggler's Copter bans every single one of these decks outright. Like, maybe some of them won't be good enough. Like, maybe the Prized Amalgam deck doesn't have enough juice, right? Maybe. But maybe it does, and if it does have an opportunity to stick around, it will be using a different 2-drop. Like maybe it uses the 2/3 Death Touch lifelink. Maybe. But maybe the blue-white deck replaces it with another Spirit, or a counterspell, or a removal
counterspell,
spell.
probably.
Right, maybe. Maybe the vehicle deck replaces it with a different vehicle. Or a couple different vehicles, a mix of vehicles. Maybe the black-green deck replaces it with Sylvan Advocate or Grasp of Darkness. I don't know. There's going to be so many more cards that fill the voids, and all the different decks are going to replace the card with something different. And I think that alone is going to lead to more diverse of a play experience. And that's to say nothing of how much the new set creates unique and extremely warping constraints. And the fact that you don't have to be constrained by Smuggler's Copter and Emrakul, that's something. That is a start so that you can actually try to set about dealing with the problem of the new world without just getting overpowered by Emrakul or Smuggler's Copter. But there's a third one.
So, Reflector Mage...
You have to admit, by the way, the Smuggler's Copter, even if you wouldn't have guessed it, clearly it's defensible.
Oh, no doubt. All three of these are... So this is my point here, right? I think, like, you're right. I have a different perspective, right? I've been playing Magic for 20-plus years. I like the puzzle aspect of what you do before the tournament starts probably more than I like actually playing the games, and that's maybe unusual relative to the audience, and they should cater to the other 8 million people more than to me. I totally get all of those kind of things. But if I just think about, like, you have to lose sometimes, and that's just part of it. If you don't lose sometimes, it's not even special when you win. So you have to lose sometimes. I just think personally, I mostly didn't mind losing to Emrakul. I largely respected losing to Smuggler's Copter, but I find losing to Reflector Mage and Spellqueller to be very frustrating. And
let me ask you something, though. Did you play in more or less standard tournaments over the last 3 months than previous?
Way less.
Right, of course. And that's part of what I'm speaking to, is that it's not the specific card, it's the incentives. It's the way it changes the game. The format ends up being much less interesting. The game's, like, all the ripple consequences. If you just look at your behavior, and I think it's pretty clear that the majority of the playing audience had a similar experience where Standard was less compelling than it has been previously. And that's why... solving it is actually, like, figuring out how to make it better is a much harder puzzle than just get rid of the winningest card. Like the winningest card, like sometimes you end up in a spot where, well, this card has just the most outrageous win rate because it's the 9th best card in the winningest strategy, but the only people who play with it are, like, really strong players compared to the more popular variation that is played by the masses and regresses to 50% or whatever. Anyway,
I understood
Reflector
what you said.
Mage. Yeah, Reflector Mage, man.
Yeah, I thought Reflector
Talk about
Mage was
not
just,
a fun card to have. Yeah.
I mean,
go ahead.
I think this lines up pretty well with what you're saying before. What the winningest card is, what the best card is, what the least fun card to lose to aren't all necessarily the same card. Even though you think they might be, right? But if you ask me, what's the strongest creature in Standard, I would have said it was Reflector Mage or Spellqueller, one of those two creatures. Not Smuggler's Copter. I'm sorry, not Emrakul. Smuggler's Copter's not even a creature, right? I think, like, Reflector Mage is such a weirdly warping Magic card. If you think about, like, its history in Standard, the fact that people would actively Reflector Mage Siege Rhinos, they Reflector Mage Emrakuls, they Reflector Mage all kinds of these kind of things and then come back and swing and win with it. That's weird, right? These cards that have powerful come into play or cast trigger abilities. And based on the incentives of the creatures in Standard, it's 2/3 body, even for 3 mana, is just... it's kind of above the curve. And I don't know.
It's an effective combination of stats.
Yeah, it's
a pretty good...
It's like a weird Frankenstein card, but it was like strangely, insanely effective. And in isolation, I can see any of these bans. I think it's weird to ban, an uncommon that's been in 3 formats now, but I'm fine with it. I don't know about what do you think about it versus some of the other cards like Spellqueller is, I think, very similarly frustrating to play against. And Thraben Inspector actually has a lot of incentives, plus on win, like, Thraben Inspector has an amazing resume for a card as young as it is. And you're not, not that anyone would ever ban Thraben Inspector, but I'm just talking about
I think that was on the list. So I think that, most in the community would be very quick to, like, Emrakul, of course. I think everybody was pretty much on the same page that was the worst influence, right? Smuggler's Copter, I think a lot of people would not have guessed, and they might not even necessarily have that be the one they would pick, but I think that it's very easy for people to see why Smuggler's Copter, and I think everybody considers it at least a reasonable choice, right? And when you're dealing with something that's so messy like this, you're not going to come up with an answer that is just the exact thing that every single person was going to do. It's not always so obvious. Smuggler's Copter, though, is an easy sell. It makes sense and is pretty clearly a generally good thing. So the Reflector Mage, though, one, the reason I think the Reflector Mage one is kind of like throwing people for a loop is that it's on a different axis than the Smuggler's Copter or Emrakul bands. Like, I think you hit the nail on the head with the what is the most fun, or what is the least fun to play against, what is the most powerful, and what is the worst incentives. Emrakul, the worst incentives, and Smuggler's Copter, the most powerful. Reflector Mage might be, it's certainly in the running for least fun to play against. But more importantly, I think that blue-white dodges blue-white was already weirdly powerful, and it's not that blue-white was like definitely the best. It might have been the best. I know that a lot of the players that I respect the absolute most have, I believe them that at top, at the top, tippity top pro level, that blue-white is not the best. But that's not necessarily the experience of the random, person, like every Tom, Dick, and Harry at Friday Night Magic.
But I think the swath under the tippity top pro level is actually, it's so narrow there, right? So, even if you're talking about, the 98th percentile, that blue-white's probably still the best. And even at the tippity top pro level, you're talking about the top half of the 99th percentile or something, or I don't even know. That probably doesn't even describe the tippity top of the pro level. It's still close, right? It's not like it's a blowout that not being the best at the
and it might be the best. It's confusing because there's also the fact that when Smuggler's Copter and Emrakul are banned, they weren't using Emrakul anyway, and Smuggler's Copter is much less important to them than other people. And the thing about Reflector Mage that I think kind of throws people for a loop is that they don't even always play Reflector Mage. Right?
It doesn't fly. It doesn't have flash.
Right. So a lot of people are like, wait, what? Gideon is so clearly, right? It's definitely Gideon followed by, it's either Gideon or Spellqueller followed by Archangel Avacyn.
Yeah, it's
right, followed by Thraben and Spectre.
You can go down three different forks with this deck. But this is the thing that I think it must be the most powerful deck, at least from my perspective. Granted, I play FNM most weeks. It's like the deck, if you just look at its curve, what's the best one casting cost card in Standard? Right? I'm sorry, I derailed you. Go ahead.
No. And you're right. It has the best cards at every cost.
It has the best, literally the best cards at every single cost. How could it not be the best?
No, just because of the win percentage, how much it wins. How much it wins has nothing to do with whether or not it has the best cards in it. It's just that when decks have the best cards, they are more likely to be the best.
There's a high correlation that they're going to have.
Right, and this pot, it just happens to be true, like most times. So,
as in other Magic the Gathering formats, the decks with the best cards have the highest win rate.
So, the other thing, if you look at the other options, Gideon it would hurt them a lot, it would be devastating to other aggro strategies. It would be devastating to red-white, to green-white, to the potential of other Gideon-based strategies that might emerge. It would definitely cause a lot of splash damage. And aggro is already taking a really big hit from Smuggler's Copter.
Smuggler's Copter is the best aggro card in Standard, right? I mean, I understand it's the best card, more or less, but specifically helps decks that attack.
And Gideon is the second best aggro card. And so banning both of them would have very profound impacts. So then you're like, okay, well, what about Archangel Avacyn? Archangel Avacyn is an incredible card, but it is also an incredible card for many other decks. So what about Thraben and Spectre? It's just like Gideon, right? So at the end of the day, you end up at a spot where you're like, well, we specifically want to target blue-white without causing the enormous splash damage that the monocolor cards do. The most obvious, without question, is Spell Queller, right? So obviously Spell Queller. However, there are lots of other factors about which cards are being played right now. So Spell Queller, while it is overpowered, while it is not fun to play against sometimes, while it has some really bad things it does, it is also some medicine. It helps. It is helping keep Aetherworks Marvel.
A counterspell for Aetherworks Marvel that doesn't get countered by negate or ceremonious rejection.
It counters Felidar Guardian.
Oh my god, thank God it counters Felidar Guardian.
It counters Saheeli Rai sometimes. It counters lots of other busted combos that we're going to see with Emrakul taken down a notch.
Oh, but this is some serious Magneto face turn. What?
Right. Yes. Spell Queller is in some ways like the Arcbound Ravager of this format. Like now that we're here, it's like yes. Unfortunately, like we didn't mean to get addicted to this ridiculous drug. However, it's the only thing keeping us alive on this planet now, so we can't really just stop cold turkey. Spell Queller is unfortunately the one of the important ways of defending against the countless ridiculous fast combo decks that are possible because of Kaladesh block. And it would be very dangerous to take one of the best forms of interaction and to remove it. Whereas if you look at Reflector Mage, while Reflector Mage is not as powerful as Spell Queller by some metrics, it might be number 2, like in the whole format. Maybe
really good.
It's really high. However, while Spell Queller makes other people play more reasonable of strategies and goes after bad guys, Reflector Mage does the opposite. Reflector Mage is only not busted when the things have already gone off the rails.
Wait, so Reflector Mage only destroys fun. Spell Queller sometimes destroys fun and sometimes promotes fun.
Right. It actually, Spell Queller gets other people, like, while it's always unfun to play against the Spell Queller, it is at least getting people to play with more fun of strategies. Like, it's rewarding you for playing with cards you should, with a mix, with a variety of costs, with more expensive cards, with removal, and it's punishing you for all-in combos.
So
that win on the 4th turn.
I think
Reflector Mage is the opposite. Reflector Mage rewards you for playing combos and punishes you for doing anything besides being a jerk.
All right, so to summarize, when people have Spell Queller in their blue-white flash deck and they Spell Queller your insert spell here, they're horrible. But when Carlos Ramau sideboards in Spell Queller in his blue-white control deck and uses it specifically to stop Aetherworks Marvel, he's a hero.
Yeah, but even just in the main deck, it might be annoying how unbelievably efficient it is, but there is a certain amount, like even when Cryptic Command is too good, it's not necessarily evil.
I think Cryptic Command is fine 99% of the time. The only time I don't like it is when it's in Black-Blue Fairies. Then I hate it. But all the rest of the time it's fine. But the reason I hate it there is because then they just use it for tempo. When people are using it for other things, it's fine.
And that's actually part of it with Spell Queller, is that the deck is so efficient at becoming a tempo type of monster, right? Like when Spell Queller is just used as a form of interaction, I don't know. I think it's a chorus of a lot of things, but I think at the end of the day...
You know, you turned me around. I totally get it now. I was just like, man, I don't like playing against Spell Queller. Like, Reflector Mage is too powerful, but you're right. Reflector Mage just punishes people for playing honest Magic. That's not good. It's not good to have the best or second best card just hurt people for playing regular Magic.
That's why we've been very critical of some of the recent cards they've made, like for instance Emrakul the Promised End and Smuggler's Copter, and Aetherworks Marvel in order to cast Emrakul the Promised End. And I think that it's important to call a spade for a spade. Like in this spot, they made a really, really hard move. And I think it's actually brilliant what they did. I'm not saying that the new standard format is going to be the perfect format ever, but this is a step in the right direction. Some of the experiments that they tried with the design philosophy of the past year, I think it's hard to get out of this spot. And I think that this is a really, really promising step in the right direction, and it might even be perfect as is.
The precedent that they can randomly ban things is actually good.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, I'm so happy that they banned some things that are the bad guys. Like, Smuggler's Copter's not a bad guy. But Smuggler's Copter is, like, demonstrably off the charts, right? Like, Emrakul is a bad guy without question, and Reflector Mage is it's weird because Emrakul is so clearly Darth Vader or whatever, right? Whereas, like, Reflector Mage
isn't a bad person. He just does only bad things.
Right? Yeah. Reflector Mage, it's actually worse. Reflector Mage gets other people to, like, Reflector Mage is getting younger. It's like getting younger people to stop going to school and instead smoke cigarettes, and it's having a really bad influence, despite the fact that it itself, it's like, dude, sit at home, don't go to school and smoke cigarettes if that's what you want. If you're just one person, but if you're getting a whole bunch of people to do something that's like hurting them or having a worse time, I don't know.
No, I get it. I am a convert. I think these are great bands now.
Plus, honestly, Saheeli Rai plus Felidar Guardian is totally messed up.
Wait, pause.
But they link together.
So here's the thing: these bands in concert, if you didn't know that Felidar Guardian was about to hit standard, these bands in concert create such a different, interesting standard in my imagination anyway than we have. Like, you could reemerge like mid-range, big-ish, Gear Hulk based green white, like similar to what you played at the Pro Tour, right? There are so many things open up, like black white control. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh wow, black white control might be a contender again. Now that its planeswalkers aren't all going to automatically be killed on the third turn, right? Like these things just open up. You're like, oh yeah, what if we have a universe of Marvel decks that isn't just about getting out Emrakul, right? Like because the Marvel decks are helped by the removal of Smuggler's Copter, but they're hurt by the removal of Emrakul. There's a new interplay. Maybe there's something here. This is all really interesting until you get to the infinite combos.
No, I'm not sure that it's not interesting. I think it's still very interesting. It's unfortunate. I think it is very likely that history will show Felidar Guardian was a mistake. I think they also know, though, I think that it would be devastating to ban it before it comes out. And this is not a memory jar situation. It's just not. Memory jar was after a year of unbelievably busted things where they banned 12 things and then to have another thing that's just winning on the first turn. It's like, okay, we have to just, like, we can't tolerate any more of this. We need Magic to survive. It's not that kind of a thing. It's not drawing 7 cards on the first turn. This is a 2-card combo that is obnoxious. It is format warping. It's not going to be super replayable forever. I don't think they should have done it, but it's also not the end of the world, and it might be fine. It might be okay. There's at least a lot of totally reasonable, normal things you can do that interact with it. And maybe there's a very good chance that this is not something that should continue to go on. I would not be surprised. I think that if it ends up being a dominating force at the Pro Tour, there's a very good chance that they'll ban it after the Pro Tour. But I could also imagine that after the Pro Tour, it turns out that people were able to adapt and it becomes like, remember when you played Splinter Twin? You had an awesome Splinter Twin deck in Standard when other people were playing Caw-Blade. And even though it was a busted combo, it was par for the course. The format was able to warp and twist and contort in ways that allowed it to actually be interesting. And even though what you were doing was probably at the end of the day a little unfair, and they should probably avoid that, but the format ended up being good. And it wasn't like it wasn't like when they banned Jace the Mind Sculptor and Stoneforge Mystic that they needed to ban Twin. In fact, banning Stoneforge Mystic and Jace the Mind Sculptor actually hurt Twin a lot.
Oh yeah, I stopped playing Twin when they banned.
Because you beat up on the Caw-Blade.
Yeah.
that might be one of the things we see is that maybe something is busted, maybe not, but it's very possible that the format will just be able to end up at a good spot by people playing with lots of ways to interact with that combo, and that combo is a part of the format, and I think it's possible that it's a very good chance that it's an unhealthy thing, but it's a new puzzle. It's very different. It's on a very different axis. And importantly, I think the banning of Reflector Mage changes the rules of engagement for how you can actually interact with the Saheeli Felidar Guardian deck. Because if Reflector Mage is legal, it's so...
What's in the deck, right? You're like, I didn't draw Saheeli. I go Reflector Mage bouncer thing, cast Felidar Guardian, flip my Reflector Mage bouncer next thing. Right? That's super frustrating to play against.
Right, Reflector Mage being legal makes it so heavily about play your own combo or play a control deck. Whereas with Reflector Mage gone, the opportunity for put down a clock and then have a little bit of disruption. Plus, I think that Reflector Mage was quietly the problem with Elder Deep Fiend, because I actually think that Elder Deep Fiend was going to be problematic in the Jeskai, in the Saheeli Rai Felidar Guardian deck. The fact that you can sacrifice Reflector Mage to Elder Deep Fiend, tap all their land, they don't have anything, and you tap all their land, and then you combo off. And the Elder Deep Fiend, they can still do, and it might still be busted. However, Reflector Mage was already one of, if not the best thing to sack to Elder Deep Fiend in that deck. And I think that Reflector Mage is just so smart of a ban in this position. It's a hard spot, and there's so many different ways you could go. And I think that it's going to be tough because some number of people are always going to want to have had it be a different way, whatever they were picturing. But I think it's so smart of a way to focus on the fun. Get back to the fun. Focus on the fun, not just the numbers. Because, I like math, but it's not always so simple as just math, because sometimes the math requires this sort of implication that you know the exact axis that you're moving on. And in this spot, I think that they really need to get back to the fun, and I think that this is a really good start.
So let's just make sure that everybody's on the same page. So Saheeli Rai is an existing planeswalker from Kaladesh, right? So Saheeli Rai costs 1, a blue and a red, for a 3 loyalty planeswalker. The important thing for our purposes right now is Saheeli's -2 ability is -2, create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control, except it's an artifact, in addition to its other types. That token gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. Then there's a new card, which is Felidar Guardian, which you've mentioned a couple of times. This card costs 3 and a white for a cat beast. It's 1/4. When Felidar Guardian enters the battlefield, you may exile another target permanent you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So basically what happens is you use a combination of Saheeli Rai's -2 ability and a Felidar Guardian in play to blink out the Felidar Guardian. To create a copy of the Felidar Guardian. The new Felidar Guardian blinks your Saheeli Rai, which then resets it to be able to use the -2 Planeswalker ability again. And you can do this any number of times in a turn. All of these Felidar Guardian tokens have haste because the condition in Saheeli Rai is -2. So in the abstract, it's a 4th turn combo kill if you go 3rd.
Well, hey, there's two ways to do it. There's the turn 3 Saheeli, turn 4 Felidar Guardian.
Yep.
Which is already a great way to do it. But you also have the option of it being a turn 6 kill with no other work, because the Felidar Guardian can come down and untap one of your land.
Yep. Oh, yeah, so the thing is, the sequencing, the fastest sequencing is turn 3 Saheeli Rai, turn 4 Felidar Guardian. But unusually for this kind of a combo, you can also invest in the Felidar Guardian. You just play it on turn 4, get a 1/4 blocker, which might be useful to you.
And often you drew a card by blinking something with an ability.
Yeah, you can blink a Thraben Inspector or something like that. And so, you could just be building a defense. It's just not dissimilar from when Splinter Twin would just play Wall of Omens, or put a Splinter Twin on a Wall of Omens in order to just defend itself while putting together the combo. So you could do this in multiple different ways. But the important thing here is that you have a card Felidar Guardian, which would be close to being playable, maybe even without Saheeli Rai. Saheeli Rai, a card that was
definitely
close to being.
I think it would. I think it would be playable anyway.
That together, there's a turn 4 infinite combo kill. So that's that's what we have. Definitely coming up. It's going to be one of the things that people will at least consider for the Pro Tour. Who knows how good it's going to be relative to other incentives. I have a hard time believing, just looking at the cards that are available, there's going to be of where you can actually end up getting to, not the mechanics of how you get there, right? Because there's a lot of ways to kill someone. You can make a pummeler big, right? That's a thing that's of similar speed to this. But of where you're getting to, it's hard for me to believe that there's going to be something that tops this. But I'd be happy to see that I'm wrong.
See, I have some fears and concerns, I guess. I wouldn't even say fears, but I have some concerns that this isn't even as top as this gets. Let me give you an example. I think it is probable, like if I were betting on what is the biggest mistake in Aether Revolt, Felidar Guardian gets my pick. However, if I have to pick another card or whatever is like, there's so many different risky, weird, crazy, busted cards, right? However, there is a card that I believe is fundamentally troubled. I think this card could be problematic in a lot of formats, and I think that it's just – so it's Inspiring Statuary. Inspiring Statuary is 3 colorless for an artifact. Non-artifact spells you cast have Improvise. This card is quietly busted. It's so under the radar for people because I think that people don't always fully appreciate how incredibly effective first of all, they don't appreciate how incredibly effective don't pay for your spells is, right? Like that's one thing, right?
I mean, don't pay for your spells is either the first or second best thing in the history of Magic.
But the second part of it is that they don't appreciate opportunity cost. Inspiring Statuary is this incredibly powerful combo engine that creates the ability to get an incredible amount of ramping on one card really fast and with recursive potential. But it's also just an accelerator. It's a 3-cost artifact that effectively produces a mana every turn because you can just tap the Inspiring Statuary to cast one of your spells. So it's like an artifact that costs 3 that produces a colorless.
Yeah, people play that card in Modern, right? Like it taps for blue or white. You might take a damage, but they actually play that card.
It's not that far. Like the problem with Inspiring Statuary is the convergence of 3 aspects: how incredibly efficient of a open-ended like super accelerator it is, combined with the loops that it incidentally makes with cards that are really good anyway, combined with the super low opportunity cost because of how much its backup plan is that it's a clue stone. It's an artifact that makes mana. That's its backup plan. It's 1 mana more expensive than Mind Stone. And I think walk through how Inspiring Statuary works with for instance, Felidar Guardian and Saheeli Rai. Let's start with, so on turn 2, you play like a Prophetic Prism. Turn 3, you play Inspiring Statuary. Now, you have committed no permanents to the board other than artifacts, right?
Well,
like
they both have utility, right? So
right.
The Prophetic Prism itself has utility in that it both drew you a card and it can filter, right? So maybe I'm just going to make this up. You're playing like a blue-red control deck that just taps for white for Felidar Guardian. That's a potential situation you're in just from the cards you've played, right?
Yep. But you could... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go. Yeah, so now it's a turn 4. You play your land and you have access to 6 mana already.
Yep. And that's not even counting the fact that when you play Inspiring Statuary on turn 3, you can just tap the Prophetic Prism in the Statuary to cast a spell too. You can just tap the 2 of them and cast like a Metal Spinner's Puzzle Knot or whatever.
Well, you could just play another Prism, but even in the situation you had where you're like Prism Statuary, on turn 4 you can play your 4th land, cast Felidar Guardian off of the Prophetic Prism, blink the Prophetic Prism, right? It comes back into play untapped and you draw a card, and then cast Saheeli Rai with your 3 remaining permanents. Is that correct?
Yep. So, like, even if they have like a removal spell for the Felidar Guardian, you still played Saheeli Rai in the same turn and drew an extra card. And you just have access to 7 mana, 8 mana next turn. Right? Like, that's ridiculous. And it's not like that's the weirdest thing. There's so many things you can do with Inspiring Statuary. For instance, picture Inspiring Statuary with Paradoxical Outcome. Now, all these artifacts you tap are helping cast your spells like Paradoxical Outcome, and then when they come back, not only are they cantrips, but they're also able to be tapped for mana again. Like, picture your deck has, like, you know how there's like 8, you can play 8 zero-cost equipment? So that you could, like, draw cards off your Paradoxical Outcome, you could draw cards off SRAM, Senior Edificer, whatever it is you're doing.
There's Ornithopter too now, right?
Ornithopter if you want, but it doesn't draw off SRAM. But yeah, so all these cards, even the ones that cost 1, though, because you can chain them all. Each of the artifacts you have that cost 1, you can tap 1 to cast another, tap that, cast another, tap that, cast another, and suddenly you're drawing a ton of cards from Paradoxical Outcome and able to actually play them all because they each help cast your other ones. So you know what you can do, though, under some weird circumstances, and I don't know that I would guess it's probably not right, but if you play some kind of an accelerator and enough cheap artifacts, like if you play, you can actually get the statuary down on turn 3 with enough mana to be able to play the entire combo right then and there. Now, I don't think that's what you're going to end up wanting to do, but it might come to that. There's also the possibility of just Paradoxical Outcome. It's not out of the question to, like, storm combo off, draw your whole deck on the 3rd turn. Like, and we haven't even got into some of the loops. Like, for instance, Paradox Engine. If you have Paradox Engine...
That's the one I was going to say, but I was like, oh, you can improvise that out. You can't, right? That's not how that card works.
Well, you can't improvise Paradox Engine out. So, like... Sorry, when I spoke earlier, you're right. Actually, you can't use the Prophetic Prism and the Statuary to cast another Prism. What you can cast is an Eldrazi, which is another thing I wanted to get to, is that Inspiring Statuary's restriction against like being used for artifacts, it actually can be exploited with the use of Eldrazi. You can just cast you still need to actually have a colorless source if you want to cast one of the ones like Reality Smasher or Thought-Knot Seer, but you can just cast some of your cheaper Eldrazi for free and use them to cast other Eldrazi.
Well, I actually love that. You can just go Inspiring Statuary into Reality Smasher on turn 4. That's hot.
And that's not even doing anything too fancy.
No, it's just sweet.
With Paradox Engine, every time you're casting a non-artifact spell, you're not only doing it on the cheap because of the statuary, but you're also untapping everything. You can actually just start netting mana.
Yeah.
And that's not even getting into the prospect of making progress because of the cards you're playing. And here's the next part. And this is the part that to me is just like, okay, this is just ridiculous. Inspiring Statuary, Keys to the City. That's just like, okay, Keys to the City was already a good card. Inspiring Statuary turns it into a Mind Stone that also gives you the option to just draw an extra card at half the rate of Jayemdae Tome. Twice as efficiently as Jayemdae Tome. Incidentally.
Kind of whenever you want, right?
Right, so in some ways, it's like you're paying 1 mana to draw a card. So, like, because you're getting 1 mana out of it, and it only costs 2 to draw the card. But if you actually have Paradox Engine, every card can just be a cantrip. It just costs you 1 mana. And if you just have artifacts that make mana, you can just quickly be netting mana. There's so much busted stuff. It's kind of weird that, like, this card is so outrageously good with Saheeli Rai plus Felidar Guardian, but then also so outrageously good with every other busted thing you could be thinking of. Ulamog? Sure. How great is it to just have an Aetherworks Marvel deck that maybe there's a different kind of Aetherworks Marvel deck that uses lots of Woodweaver's Puzzle Knots and Glassblower's Puzzle Knots, and maybe it's got some cantrip artifacts and Inspiring Statuary, and you just cast Ulamog on turn 5.
I like
because
it.
You just
in.
Like, there's so many things you can do, none of which you should be able to do. This card is just, it enables every bad thing. All of the things.
This is kind of where I was going before. I think, like, if some of these... I think that the new Felidar guy and Saheeli Rai combo is emblematic of where I thought the danger was coming from Aether Revolt. But I thought, like, wow, we might have a renaissance or at least interplay from mid-range decks, green-white decks, etc. in Standard. But, like, those decks just don't have the tools to be able to interact with the kind of things that you're describing.
Maybe. Maybe they don't. Maybe they might, though. They haven't. You got to look first, because maybe they can just, like, it might be the case that it just so happens that you can actually main deck, like, some specific type of removal cards that happen to be very good there. Or it might be the case that you have the right kind of lock components, right? Like, maybe these green-white decks end up playing a bunch of Thalias, right?
Oh, okay.
And maybe because Thalia, Heretic Athar, incidentally disrupts the Felidar Saheeli combo, and it also greatly impacts a bunch of the other stuff we're talking about, like, for instance, Reality Smasher. Like, for instance, Archangel Avacyn. Like, for instance, the prospect of chaining a bunch of these, like being able to chain some of the cards with the statuary. I don't know, man. I think that it's confusing at the very least. Like, and this isn't. We haven't even got into the stuff like Authority of the Console, right? Like, maybe Authority of the Console is really good and creates good incentives. Maybe, for instance, how about Distended Mindbender? Distended Mindbender is like textbook made to mess up the Felidar Guardian and Saheeli Rai combo. Because, like,
get a little of this, get a little of that.
If they just put out their cards, you can just kill them, right? Like, maybe your deck has To the Slaughter, so that you can, like, kill both the Felidar Guardian and the Saheeli in one big shot, because you have, like, enough ways to turn on Delirium. But either way, you can break up the combo. But then also, if the person tries to, like, slow play things, you can easily get a Distended Mindbender down before turn 6, and then you actually take both halves of the combo.
And it's super hard for them to counter that, right? So that's the thing. Like, normally, if you're going to commit 4+ mana on this kind of an effect against a blue combo deck, you're just asking to get counterspelled, untapped, and killed. But since the effect itself is very difficult to counterspell, you need to have very specialized cards to do so, then it's just going to happen, probably.
Right. At least much more often. And it gets around some of the, like, one of the most natural, best interaction pieces, Spell Queller, and another, Negate. It completely sidesteps them. And then even if they have Disallow, which could potentially stop the trigger, it still has it's a fast clock you're putting them on. And it's not trivial for them to keep up 3 mana counterspells. I just think that it's, I mean, it's very possible that it's all busted, but it's possible that some of those decks incidentally have ways of being able to play a fair, honest game in an unfair world.
I hope you're right. I love playing a fair, honest game.
Well, I'm definitely right that they have chances, but they might fail. Let's just be clear about that. I'm not – there's so much busted stuff going on here, man. I just think it's – at the very least, it's a very different puzzle.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned Gifted Aetherborn earlier, and maybe that'll be a card we talk about in our regularly scheduled episode. But you just look at a card like this, and I'm like, this is just so up my alley. And it's like, oh, wow, a 2/3 lifelink Death Touch creature for 2. Man, I love this card. And then you're like, well, it doesn't actually stop somebody from killing you on turn 4. And, you know, maybe just playing the right removal, though, because you could play with murders to kill things at instant speed.
Grasp of Darkness is a great one.
You could play with Ruinous Path to kill their Saheeli Rai if they expose it on turn 3. You know,
so the Slaughter being an instant, I think, is a big game, and potentially hitting both halves of the combo.
And you can make them discard things. You know, those things are all there. And this is it's a very efficient creature in the normal universe.
There's a couple other lot components that I think have, like, we might be entering this weird era of, like, hate bears and disruption being, like, of increased importance. Like, for instance, what do you think of Hope of Girapar? the 1-cost 1/1 flying legendary artifact Thopter. Like, it sacrifice Hope of Girapur until your next turn. Target player who is dealt combat damage by Hope of Girapur this turn can't cast non-creature spells. So on the surface, it's like, oh, this is like a way to force through your own combo, and that might be part of it. But when you hit your opponent with this, you also know that they're not going to cast Saheeli Rai on their next turn, and it's a very Xanthid Swarm card, right? Well, no, but the thing is, it has haste. You can just put this down and use it. You don't have to hit them. It's literally just. Oh no, sorry. You do have to hit them first. You're right. My apologies.
Wait.
With the Girapur.
With Girapur, yeah.
Right. But it's a 1/1 flyer for 1, which is already, like, not embarrassing.
Well, you
right?
can just play this card, right? Like,
right. If you're using it as an accelerator for, like, I don't know, inspiring statuary.
Like, what was the name of the cloud sprites that people played in Mono Blue Devotion?
Cloud of Fairies.
Yeah, or any kind of cloud sprites that had been played.
Oh, I see. Cloud of Fairies, yeah.
Yeah, like, this card is actually just much better than a bunch of cards that are 1 Pro Tours, right? Like, and, you know, it's not blue, but it flies, it costs 1, and it has a really, really relevant ability. The fact that it's a legend is kind of a minus, except for the fact that you have a high incentive to sacrifice it, so it can clear the way for the next one anyway, which is... You know, it's not a zero-sum game, but it's also, it gives you a few points back.
Right. So here's another one. This one's probably bad, but I don't know. Pacification Array, the 1-cost artifact that has 2 in tap target artifact or creature.
See, I don't think that one's that bad. Like, I think like that's a kind of card that I can really imagine that being played somewhere somehow in a Trinket Mage strategy. Like, I could totally see wanting that card sometimes.
Yeah, but it doesn't really stop the combo.
Well, it doesn't stop this particular combo, right?
It could stop some of them, like if they're on a pummeler deck or whatever.
I mean, I'm just saying specifically, people play weird things in Trinket Mage decks, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Trinket Mage...
They've played a lot weirder than this.
...has been a star in a bunch of different formats. And I'm just saying, like, that is nowhere near the weirdest thing I can imagine getting with a Trinket Mage, and I would totally want an Icy Manipulator sometimes. That's the thing.
Yep. So I just think that there's enough different, there's a variety of weird interaction elements that I think it's not going to be so obvious what on the surface is immediately even going on, because I think we're in such an alien world. And there's lots of interactive pieces from this new set. It's not just combo pieces. There's weird cards that change some of the fundamental assumptions, which we'll talk about on Thursday. But, like, some of I think this set is just, like, an outlier.
It's a very different set than we've seen for standard play in a long... I mean... I can't even imagine, like, we're used to having our being really happy with a 4-drop like Butcher of the Horde, right? Like, that's like, oh, wow, what an exciting card. Now we're getting a 4-drop like Crackdown Construct. Like,
you might put down Herald of Anguish as, like, a 2-mana play and leave 4 open. Like, on turn 6, you might just play Herald of Anguish with 4 mana open and then just be threatening that if they try to play a Felidar Guardian, you can just kill it by sacrificing 2 artifacts.
I mean, like, I kind of like the fact that play exists.
Yeah. There's very real chances. There is, like, very real chances of a good format. You know, like, this is like, there's a bunch of stuff to consider and to try and to that has chances of working. Like, for instance, you might disallow. Like, disallow obviously could just counter something, right? But, like, you might actually let them play their Felidar Guardian so that they blink their Felidar Guardian with Saheeli Rai, and then you just disallow the triggered ability so that it doesn't go away, because you just want to get the loyalty low enough on Saheeli Rai to kill it. You know? Like, there's lots of weird lines of interaction that might exist depending on what things end up getting played or not.
Yep.
So, I don't know. I think it's going to be – this is a very, very exciting time. A busted strategy is It's weird. It's always exciting to find a busted strategy. It's disconcerting when, your 4-year-old cousin finds the strategy also. However, this is an exciting new world. The change of the removal of Emrakul, Smuggler's Copter, and Reflector Mage combined with one of the most questionably high-powered sets in a long time, with so many new cards to try and explore, this is definitely a brave new world.
I mean, this Kaladesh has the feel, I think, of... Remember, like, on Ravnica, there were the Izzets and the Simics, right? Like, these, like, crazy plumbers and crazy biologists, and they were just all geniuses, right? Like, Niv Mizzet is a genius, but they're all Looney Tunes. I think that Kaladesh and Aether Revolt have the flavor of this that we've seen from some of these past built worlds, where it's just exploding with possibilities.
Yes.
And that is very different than... I loved the standard that had Siege Rhino, for example. Right? I thought it was really good. I love the fact there was, like, you can play a 4-color deck. You can play at least 3 different Siege Rhino decks. You can play black-blue control. You can play dragon control. There are all these different things. You could play a fast mono-red deck, and that would win multiple Pro Tours. There's all these things going on. But there were, for the most part, defined lanes that you would drive through, right? This is not like that. I mean, yes, there are some obviously proscripted combos like Saheeli Rai and Felidar, but even just what we talked about in this podcast, I can imagine you just have not an aggro deck, but an aggro deck in the sense of a blue-white deck from our current standard, where you just have a bunch of creatures and you're playing a tempo-oriented game that, oops, you could just combo kill them sometimes. Like, I think that's a potential deck. I think there's probably also a blue-red control deck or Jeskai control deck that happens to have an infinite combo as one of its ways to win. And I think there's probably 3 or 4 other ways to implement just this same 2-card combo that might not even include 4 copies of both cards in standard. And that's also interesting to me.
Yep, definitely. Dude, I wouldn't be surprised if the Pro Tour rolls around and people are like, thank God they banned Smuggler's Copter. The vehicle deck is already oppressive.
All right. I think that's possible, too. Vehicle deck has a, it was a whiz-bang boom to begin with, but it's had a fairly quiet couple of months since Black-Green, Marvel, and Blue-White kind of took
I'm talking a new kind of vehicle
new vehicle deck. All right.
Oh, yeah. All right, man.
All right.
Thursday.
See you Thursday. Everybody else, thanks for listening, and hit the subscribe button. We would love it.
Rad. Hope you guys have a great couple days and join us back. See you then.
Bye-bye.